Welcome back to the Ford Shop Yard, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ryan. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to tell if your car or truck needs new shocks. Now, take my 1974 Ford Maverick here. It's almost 50 years old. All original suspension, tie rods, ball joints, all original. But here's how to tell if you need new shocks. See how much it bounced up and down? The back shocks are absolutely shot, which I'll show you in just a second. As we go into the car, as you can see, there's the passenger side shock. And if you look close, see all that grease leaking out of it? That's the oil leaking out of the shock. The seals have gone bad. Again, this is almost a 50-year-old car. All the original suspension. As you can see, the shocks are absolutely worn out, slap worn out. See all that grease? They need to be replaced. On the driver's side, it's not as bad, but it is shot. As you can see, it is starting to seep. The seals have pretty much gone bad as well, but it's not leaking like the other one is, all the way down it. It's just kind of a little bit there. Okay. And again, the same applies for the front shocks as well. You just want to kind of push on them. See, the fronts aren't worn out like the backs are. I do need to replace all of them, and that's what I'm going to do. When I get back to working, I'm going to replace all the shocks, all the suspension parts, tie rods, ball joints, everything. I'm going to restore this car like it was back in 1974 and make it look beautiful again. Now, what kind of shocks should you buy? Well, from my experience, you don't want to go out and buy the cheapest shock out there. They're called Monroe shocks, or Monroe Gasmatic, all kinds of. The Monroe brand, it's a cheap brand. It doesn't work very good. You're not going to get a comfortable ride. And so, like I said, from my experience, the best shocks to buy for the money are called KYB. KYB shocks. You're going to spend a little bit more money, but again, if you want your car to ride as not smooth as possible, you want the best shocks. KYB is the best shocks to get. Unless you can go out and get Motorcraft, like in my Fords, I would only buy Motorcraft if I can find them. Now, they're not. Motorcraft brand is kind of difficult to find on some parts, suspension parts and things like that. Like I was looking for a set of Motorcraft ball joints from a blue F-150, but they're like $100 a piece, Motorcraft OEM. So, and I had looked for Moog and asked some people what the best brand ball joints are. I said Moog ain't all that great because had one person tell me someone they knew put Moog ball joints on their vehicle and they didn't last 6 miles, which is not quite true because, I mean, you know, if they had failed, they probably put them in wrong. When you're doing suspension parts, you want to make sure all your stuff is done right. You got all your cotter pins in, all your, you know, bolts tightened down and torqued down to spec. If you put, you know, suspension parts in your car and it only lasts 6 miles, you've done something wrong. That tells you right there you've done something wrong. So, as far as shocks go, KYB is the best brand to get. Like my F-150 here, it's got Gabriel shocks on it, but it's had those on since I've had it. I guess the previous owner replaced them. I don't know, but there's Gabriel shocks on here, as you'll see. Okay, going into my F-150 here, underneath, you see the shocks. They're Gabriel, as you see right there, it says Gabriel Ultra shocks. And these shocks are perfectly fine, and you know, it's the same. There's Gabriel shocks in the front, and then you see Gabriel Ultra, you know. When we come to the back, different story. I don't know what kind of shocks these are. These may be the original Motorcraft shocks on the back. I'm not sure. I haven't found a name. But they still work perfectly fine. I mean, you know, you can see it bounces up and down. I mean, it's working perfectly fine. They're not worn out. I do have a flat tire up here I do need to replace. I'm going to do that soon when I get ready to move them all. Again, speaking about ball joints, tire rods, you know, you want to grease them about every 5,000 miles. If you have a new vehicle, you buy it brand new, every time you change your oil, you need to grease all your ball joints and things like that, your tire rods. As you can see here on my 1974 Maverick, the ball joints are pretty much shot. I mean, like they're almost 50 years old, all original. And, you know, see there, the boots ripped. And so, I've seen most people, what they'll do, they'll get a needle. Like these ball joints, these have grease fittings in. But on most ball joints and tire rods, on most modern cars, they don't have grease fittings. So, as I said, most modern cars don't have grease fittings on the ball joints and tire rods. And I have seen it where, excuse me, on most people, when they change their oil, they go to grease their suspension. Again, you don't have any grease fittings, so they'll take like a bicycle pump or a basketball pump, get a little needle, and poke it into the boot and pump the grease in that way. Not a good idea, because once you poke a hole in that boot, it's going to just rip. Over a short period of time, it's going to rip, all the grease is going to come out, and it's going to wear your ball joints and tire rods out prematurely. So don't ever use a needle on your ball joints if you don't have a grease fitting. If you need to replace your ball joints, you can get them all, you know, replacement ball joints. Most of them have grease fittings. They call them Zerk fittings as well. And you just grease them about every 5,000 miles. When you change your oil, grease all your suspension parts about every 5,000 miles. You'll never have any problems. But do not stick a needle in your boots, because they will rip over time and you'll ruin your ball joint. And in some instances, if like when you take your car to a mechanic and have them do work on your car, they try to sell you a whole bunch of junk that sometimes you don't even need. Like take your shock absorbers, for instance. Most of the time they'll have a little grease, little oil can there, and they'll squirt oil all over your shock. And then when you get them to pick your car up, they're like, oh look, your shocks are leaking, you need new suspension, you need new shocks, and things like that. And it's just a scam to get them to sell you more parts and things that you don't even really need. And most times, like I said, when you take your car in for work, they're trying to scam you and squirt oil on your shocks and tell you, oh, you need new shocks, you need this, you need that. It's just a gimmick for them to sell you parts that you don't need and making extra money to rip you, and you'll get ripped off in the end. Now, I've also seen it where you take your car in for work, and you know, let's say your car's got all these lights on inside on the dash, and you're like, oh God, I hope it don't break down, I don't know what's wrong. Most of the time, all you need to do is have a scan tool hooked up and check those codes. Maybe it's just a weak battery. Weak battery will make all kinds of odd things happen in your vehicle, to your electronics. You know, maybe it's I don't know. Maybe you like I said, when your battery gets weak, crazy things will happen, and sometimes all you need is a battery replacement, and all those problems go away. You reset the code, they don't come back, all because you needed a battery. I don't know how many times I've seen people that have a certain problem in the car, and they'll go out and buy all these parts they think they need and spend thousands of dollars in the end, and it don't fix their problem. All because in the beginning they didn't check to see what was wrong in the first place. Your service light's on, or your check engine light, whatever, You need to have those codes scanned. You can go to AutoZone, O'Reilly's, wherever, Napa, and they will scan your vehicle for free of charge. Don't cost you a thing, it's free of charge. Hook the scan tool up, they'll show you what's wrong, and they'll help you buy the parts you need, if you need any. And they sell a lot of batteries. Give you a little battery tip. When you're buying batteries, always buy the freshest one. Most of them batteries have been sitting on the shelf for months and months and months. You got one that's been sitting on the shelf 6-8 months, it's done lost over half of its battery life already, just from sitting. When you go to buy a battery, you want the freshest one you can get. Like if I went right now, if I needed a battery right now, and I went to AutoZone or O'Reilly's Advance, I would look at the date. There's a date on it. It says when it was made. If it was made in February of 2022, that's the one you get. If it was made in December 2021, don't buy it. It's done lost a good percentage of its battery life anyway. But as I said again, most mechanics just want to rip you off and take all the money you got just to make a buck. So always find a good, honest mechanic that won't rip you off. And always use that mechanic when you have a car problem. Like I say, I own Fords. I ain't never had no problem with none of my Fords. Some of them need some work, getting back on the road again, but it's nothing major. I mean, I'm not going to go out and spend $50,000 on a Toyota or Honda. Everybody says, oh, them are the best vehicles to buy. Well, not in my opinion. People say, oh, they last long as they run forever. You never had any problems with them, they don't break down. Well, here's another thing. I don't care what kind of car you have. As long as you change your oil, transmission fluid, and your brake pads every once in a while. Your oil needs to be changed every 5,000 miles. In modern cars, you use full synthetic oil. Change it every 5,000 miles. And if you do all highway driving, which is equivalent to 10% of the city, push it to 8 or 10 if you want. But if that's all you're doing is highway driving, it won't hurt to push it to 8 or 10,000. But at most, at the least, you need to change it every 5,000. That's the limit. Now, if you're a fanatic, you can change it at 3. But I changed all mine at 5. Never had any problems. I use quality oil filters. Never had any problems. Change my transmission fluid every 40, 50,000 miles. And brake pads when they wear out. Now, people say, oh, Mercedes, BMW, Lamborghinis, they don't hold up well over time. That's a bunch of crap, too. Why? Because, yeah, all those cars have a bunch of electronics on them, but they're not going to break, 5, 10 years down the road. When you get 5, 10 years old, electronics do break down, but they're not going to break down that fast. Now, say you bought a car, turned out to be flooded, but you didn't know anything about it. It may be fine when you first get it. It may work perfectly fine, but 5, 10 years down the road, you're going to start having all these lights come up, things are going to start going crazy, and that's the water getting into all the electronics, shorting everything out. And you might as well just say goodbye car then. Because you'll never find, if it's been flooded and you didn't know it, no telling, there's no telling, you would never be able to get it fixed. But that's it for today's video, guys. Remember, if you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss another one of my videos. Hit that like button and comment down below. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you next time.